The Mannin Line.
Faster my good afternoon and welcome along to Manx Radio's Mannin Line for a Monday, 23rd of October. Alex sitting in for Andy for the final day. He's back in the chair tomorrow. It's just gone 12:05. So what would you like to talk about today? Open line through until 1 o'clock. Do we want to talk about whether it's one rule for one and one rule for another in terms of planning on the Isle of Man? We're going to hear from Peter Kelly regarding the demolition or proposed demolition of Tramway Terrace, a government-owned building, and whether there are any similarities with the planning issues of the old Newsome's building on North Quay in Douglas. Also, we're talking about water quality on the island, but we're looking for the so-called forever chemicals. Okay, and apparently Manx Utilities say that we test our water quarterly on the island. Should we be doing it more than that? In further afield, other jurisdictions, they do it a lot more regularly than quarterly on the island. Quarterly water checks rather than the ones we get on the island. We've got a few other texts and comments that came in at the end of last week's show to get to, but I would love to hear from you on the phones, of course. 66 13 68. I don't bite, so if you're a first-time caller, do give us a call. It'd be love to hear from you if you've got any other topic about Manx life that is on your mind. Thank you very much to Panicking in Port St Mary, who says, "Hiya, I'm terrified to read in the Courier that the Chief Minister is in talks with a UK MP about a new ferry terminal at Heysham. Here we go again." Well, I did note this story in the Courier. It was sent to us on the end of the show last week. And this was more along the lines of an MP in the local county council in the Morecambe and Heysham area talking about refurbishing or building a new ferry port in Heysham. I don't think at this stage it's not the same situation as we're finding ourselves in Liverpool, where the Isle of Man government has bought, they've taken on a long-term lease of the site in Liverpool. They've built this new terminal. They're having to pay for all the works to create the ferry berth there. I don't think the proposal is for the Isle of Man government to have a new ferry terminal in Heysham, but it could be a new gateway for the island, because the Liverpool ferry terminal will not be able to take the freight that we require on a daily basis, that the Ben McCree and the Manxman bring in, okay, which is where Heysham is still the main port in terms of our lifeline for food and supplies. So, does Heysham need investment? Is it going to be something that we as Isle of Man taxpayers will have to fork out towards? Are we happy to fork out towards it? Bearing in mind the sheer amount of taxpayers' money that has been thrown at our sea services in recent years, totalling hundreds of millions of pounds, in times when we don't have enough money for anything else. Okay, the question is, do we want to? Are we going to have to? Or is this something that Peel Ports and maybe local councils in the UK are going to fund an improved ferry terminal at Heysham Port? I don't know. We will find out. What else have we got coming in? Fran, Alex, it's been nice to have you doing the Mannin Line, so let's make the most of it before we return to the government cover-up show. Fran, I can assure you we never cover up for government, okay? But it says, how on earth have the horse tram buildings been allowed to get to this state? Isn't it a protected building? You'd have thought so. Out of the 50-plus properties, the property managers that the DOI employ, at least one of them would have kept an eye on the building. Well, it is a protected building. We're talking about Tramway Terrace, which is the building that's got a huge amount of scaffolding up the front of it, down next to what used to be Paramount City. And it is owned by the Department of Infrastructure, and it is a protected building. Thank you very much to the person who sent me the actual register of it. It says, hereby notice is given on the 13th of June 2018. The Department of Environment, Food and Agriculture, in pursuant of its powers, has determined that Douglas Bay Horse Tram Stables and 1 to 3 Tramway Terrace, Queen's Promenade in Douglas, as identified in the register, should be entered onto its protected buildings register by reason of special architectural and historic interest. The effect of this registration is immediate and prohibits the alteration or demolition of the structure or appearance of any part of the building except in compliance with an obligation imposed by or under statutory provision or with the prior written consent of the planning authority. So, this is a similar situation to the private developer who was trying to redevelop the Newsom's site, which became quite a political hot potato, on North Quay in Douglas. But this is a government building, and it seems that their request from the outside, it seems as if because it's a government building and it's been allowed to fall into this state, it hasn't been maintained, that they're going to be able to bypass the planning procedure. That's what it looks like too from the outside. We have tried to contact the Minister, Tim Crookall. He's elusive at present in terms of getting a comment from him and the department. As soon as we have it, we will let you know, of course. But, yep, if they don't want to talk to us, they don't want to talk to us. We'll talk a little more about that planning process and how it appears from the outside in a moment. First of all, G has been on in terms of the freight links, because I mentioned there about obviously the Heysham port is our a lifeline link to the UK, isn't it? G says, why can't we develop freight links from Southern Ireland, from Eire, if we are independent? That's a good point, actually, G. It was something that was floated last week on the Mannin Line with the representatives from Visit Isle of Man, Deborah Heather and Ranald Caldwell were in, and we mentioned about how steam packet sailings to Ireland have, over the years, been reducing in frequency and popularity, and they floated the idea that, well, maybe the steam packet doesn't want to service Ireland anymore, and another ferry operator could come in and service that way. So the only question is, I suppose, G, is, and I don't know the answer to this, if you're trading with Southern Ireland, you're trading into the European Union, and then all the post-Brexit mire of stuff, of how all the paperwork and everything else, that would be the difficulty there. Thank you very much to Tony. Sent in a text saying, hi, did you get the chance to watch Mr. Bridgen giving his speech in Parliament the other day? Julian was on Friday talking about this. This was regarding the massive excess death. Okay, that wasn't the exact title of it, Tony. I think you've got to be careful the way you phrase that. It's the excess death reporting. I doubt you read this out. Well, I am. But I and many others thinks it's linked to the vaccine rollout. Tony, love to hear your scientific evidence on that one, as opposed to just theorising. The timing is too uncanny otherwise. Once again, scientific evidence, Tony, not coincidental. Just wondering if the media will apologise when the truth is allowed to come out, or will you cover it up? You were all too quick to tell us about the COVID-19 deaths, but now nothing. Once again, Tony, anything that's scientific, proven, verified fact? Yeah, no problem. Conspiracy stuff? Well, give me the facts, and I'm sure we'll follow it up for you. Fran says, Alex, anyone thought about contacting Stena Line about sharing the new terminal at Liverpool? And, well, to be honest, I don't know. Maybe the Department of Infrastructure will do at some point. I think we're all in a situation now where you're looking at the price we've paid for Liverpool, and also I'd imagine there's going to be ongoing costs because the River Mersey silts up. That area does have to be dredged. The vessels we're going to be using there, the Manxman, it's not a small pleasure craft. Okay, so that maybe we're going to have ongoing costs here, which, if Stena are interested, could be shared. However, I did mention before that it's not a freight berth, and I know for well that Stena, who use 12 quays on the other side of the Mersey, do a lot of freight. So they're not going to be interested in purely passenger traffic, I'd imagine. But who knows? Do give us a call. You're very quiet on the phones today. Is everyone happy with the world? 66 13 68. I'd love to have a chat with you on air about anything that is on your mind, or anything that you'd like to get out there and maybe someone else has an answer for. But, as I mentioned earlier on, an architectural historian has questioned the legitimacy of government plans to demolish the protected building on Douglas Promenade. Peter Kelly doesn't believe the proposed demolition of Tramway Terrace next to the tram stables has followed proper planning procedures. The Department of Infrastructure says that after a recent inspection of the building following stormy weather, experts have recommended demolition, but Mr. Kelly, who is a member of the Isle of Man Victorian Society, has concerns.
I'm concerned that it's suddenly been announced that it's dangerous, 3 weeks after the registered building officer has left. Will the department bring in a structural engineer, as in the past, to look at this building? It's just bewildering.
Do you think it could be an example of the DOI having to fulfil proper planning and registered building procedures, maybe taking this step to avoid that?
Well, it's a reason for claiming that you don't go through the hoops as Nuisance had to. By saying, it's falling down and it's in imminent danger. Although that was what was said about Nuisance. But they still had to go through the process and it's still standing. So I'm rather concerned that to the outside, it looks like one government department assisting another, whereas in the Nuisance case, it was one government department and one private owner. And to me, it should be following the same process.
That's Peter Kelly talking there. Jenny is on the phone, wants to talk about registered buildings. Hello, Jenny.
Hello, hi. We bought an old bankstone cottage 5 years ago. 1973, it had an extension built on, which has a flat roof at the back. It looks awful. It is like a 1960s toilet block. It doesn't look out of place in the middle of Coventry or Birmingham. It's brutalist architecture at its worst. It's still the original roof after 53 years. So we wanted to put on a modern pitched roof with proper insulation, bring it up to code, as they call it, etc. So when we put the planning application in, first of all, the planning officer said, I can't see a problem with this. Then he got back to us and said, because the principal building, which is the old cottage, is over 200 years old, even though it's not a registered building, and we are in the middle of nowhere, nobody can really see it. We're on a cart track, it's not even a road. He said that he would have to run it by the registered buildings officer as a matter of courtesy. When he did that, the registered buildings officer said, no, I don't like that, the pitched roof, replacing the flat roof, so therefore our planning was refused. We went backwards and forwards with planning for 2 years. Eventually, we told them, well, please decline it officially and we'll put in an appeal, which we did. And the inspector from the UK came and had a look, and he agreed with everything that we said, that after 53 years, the principal building was no more, and the cottage and the extension was one in its entirety. And in fact, a pitched roof would improve the look of it no end. Now, one of the reasons that the Registered Buildings Officer gave for declining the pitched roof was that it would spoil the look of the countryside. Now, I hate to bring up wind farms, but we are within sight of Eriestrain. So if our pitched roof that nobody could see would have spoilt the look of the countryside, would wind turbines not do the same? But anyway, that's the Registered Buildings Officer story for us. Not a registered buildings, but because of the age of the principal building, as he called it, it was declined. But then we have won our appeal.
Well, I'm glad to hear you've won your appeal. I mean, there's that story brings up a whole host of questions. I mean, so you say that basically they turned around and said, we don't have to ask the Registered Buildings Officer, but we're going to do it as a courtesy. And yes. You sit there going, well, if it's a courtesy and it's going to work against you, that sounds like you're being pushed in a direction in order to get a certain outcome by the sound of it.
Yes, and absolutely, and nobody could really see his reasoning. We had a number of site visits by a number of planners and etc. Nobody could really see why he didn't like it. I mean, it really is the most awful carbuncle stuck on the back of the cottage. And at first, he actually wanted us to demolish the extension that's been here for 53 years. So when we brought up policy documents stating that demolition should be a last resort because of carbon footprints, we were told, well, that's another department's policy. We don't follow that policy.
So
Yes, but to demolish it and rebuild something, because apparently whoever they are, wouldn't have built it like that. Well, they did, because it's been here for 53 years, and build it to something that wouldn't have worked whatsoever and would have looked even worse, and we would have lost a lot of space at the back, etc. So it was just a non-starter. But to turn around and say that, when we highlighted what it says in, I forget which document it is, about demolishing should be a last resort because to demolish and rebuild increases your carbon footprint no end, then to turn around and say we don't follow other departments' policies seems a bit of a not really joined up, would you say?
You make it sound very much like, and if I'm putting words in your mouth, tell me off. You make it sound like actually the planning system is oppressive, almost. And there's too much red tape. There's too much bureaucracy. It doesn't seem to be pro actually supporting you in getting your planning through.
I would absolutely agree. I mean, we're very much into reuse, recycle, reclaim. Mm-hmm. We've obtained over the past 5 years, with an intention of doing this work, lots of reclaimed Manx stone from other demolitions. We've got giant beams from other demolitions. We were going to do it traditionally, put a new roof on, modern insulation, etc., but with traditional. But none of that counted. That, we were reducing carbon footprint by not using new materials. It's absolutely created a whole can of worms, really. And I don't suppose I can say on air what I actually ended up saying to the registered buildings officer. But I said, how can you say that you don't like the look of a pitched roof to replace an awful flat roof? And I did say, well, if you put a dog poo on it, it'd look better, but not quite in those words.
Well, I'm glad to hear you've been a little more ladylike for me today. So thank you very much, Jenny. In terms of your experience, though, how would you, flipping it on its head, how would you expect a registered buildings officer to behave in terms of registered buildings? Because the whole idea of registered buildings is that we register generally to protect things that have got architectural, historical interest. And if you go to places like Bath in the UK, that's a beautiful town because their planning works well. They actually enforce the planning throughout and everything's kept in beautiful condition and it's all kept in keeping. And yet, over here on the Isle of Man, we seem to have a promenade that's got the Villiers carbuncle at one end. We're demolishing without, it would appear, going through the proper planning process on the other end with the Tramway Terrace. You've got these varying different ways in between. And a registered building officer is meant to somehow exercise some cultural conscience over that. I mean, how would you perceive they should do that?
Well, every individual building should be taken on its merit. Mm-hmm. Some buildings are of architectural merit, even though they, to some people, would look hideous. But I do believe that buildings should be preserved. Our traditional Manx cottage, 2 up, 2 down, we stripped it back to how it was when it was originally built. We removed all the concrete, all the cement. We've redone it all with lime. We've put a limecrete flooring with modern foam glass recycled aggregate underneath. I think the registered buildings officer should look at each building with individual merit, and registered buildings should be registered for a reason. I think they should be preserved, and they should be preserved as they were intended. But I do also think if alterations have been made, as ours had in 1970, then they should be considered. Do they not also have some sort of merit? And if they don't, then something to change them, to give them some sort of merit, I think should also be considered. And there should actually be policies, not just, I don't like it. That's just a personal opinion. There should be proper procedure, policies, documents that state things, and also they should have joined up with other departments to look at how planning is affected by the policies of other departments. And they should all work together, really.
And finally, I have to ask, Jenny, have you managed to do this work on the extension, the pitched roof? Have you got it all finished yet?
No, we did get our planning through in April, but unfortunately, it's all been a bit of a mix-up. We didn't see the plans before they were submitted because it was a bit of a rush by the person doing it, and now we fall under building regs because it's written, and it's nobody's fault, really, particularly, that it was a first floor extension rather than roof. It is just a re-roof. But now it comes under building regs, so now we've got to get building regs drawings done, which we're in the process now of doing it. So we're spending yet another year with a bathroom and a bedroom with a roof that leaks. We have in the bedroom a big tent erected in the bedroom, which the bed is in because the roof leaks. And there's no heat in the bathroom, so it's a dash in and dash out job. Because until the roof gets on, there's no point doing it because all the heat would just go straight out of the leaky roof. Oh, that was just to end on a note. Because we'd done so much work restoring the old cottage, when there was an inspection, when we read the final report refusing it, it said that we didn't need to do any work in the extension because we'd done so much work in the original cottage.
Right.
Again, an opinion,
Yeah.
which the inspector, when in his report, said it. Well, he didn't say it was ridiculous, but that's what he implied.
I have to say, Jenny, if nothing else, at the end of all this, write a sitcom about it.
Oh, everybody says I should write a book because I write these things, but I write them sort of in a funny way. I mean, I'm washing with a dolly tub, and I'm the lady who appeared on one of your short videos on Manx Radio. Alex Foster came and videoed me mangling and dolly tubbing.
Excellent. You should write a book, The Isle of Man, where you can.
Yes, as long as you don't want to.
Yeah. Jenny, thank you very much for your call today.
You're welcome. Take care.
Cheers. Thanks very much, Jenny, sharing her experiences there with planning and letting the registered building officer know as a courtesy. And then it wasn't very courteous that effectively you could turn around and say no. Okay. The question is, you sit there going, well, I won't ask him as a courtesy next time. But thank you very much, Jenny, for that. We are talking about registered buildings on the back of the news that the DOI is going for an emergency demolition of Tramway Terrace, number 1 to 3 on Douglas Promenade, even though it is a registered protected building that is protected from demolition. We've approached the DOI Minister, Tim Crookall, who is currently being elusive in responding to us to basically give us some more details behind this. What else have we got here? Thank you very much to Patricia, who's dropped us a line about this, saying Department of Infrastructure has been monitoring the deterioration of Tramway Terrace since 2018, it says. Granted, the building was not in good condition when they acquired it, but since then, they've never had plans to improve it for the long-term future, with its future always being in question. So why did they leave it until it had to be subject of an emergency demolition? The sceptic in me says this is just another example of the DOI avoiding having to fulfil proper planning and registered building procedures to apply for the demolition of a registered building. And what is more, a registered building in the Promenade's conservation area. Oh, of course, we hadn't mentioned that. Have the DOI undertaken a full historic building record of the building? Have they measured up the salient features of the building, its archway, its size, its height? Have they considered whether the notable front facade could be retained? Because that what did with the Spectrum Apartments, what used to be the Crescent Leisure Centre. They actually retained that, didn't they? Have they considered Have they considered how demolition will impact on the neighbouring building? The former Promenade City nightclub to which it's joined. All of this will be required if the planning process were to be involved. If this full demolition goes ahead, it will leave the old stables, originally belonging to George Jones, a letter carrier, and the purpose-built 1877 Thomas Lightfoot stables open to the elements, which they have always been protected from. What plans have the DOI got for the physical protection of these buildings in the way of sheltering them from the onshore sea breezes while still enabling their use? Or do they want to see the buildings behind become seriously damaged too as a result? Or is the DOI just hoping that they can end the use of the stables and the tramway again? And why couldn't they wait until the end of the tramway season, which at the time of writing was only 11 days away? Yes, they've suddenly stopped the horse trams, haven't they, because of this, 11 days earlier. Thank you to Patricia from Laxey, who emailed that in. Right, I'm going to get some of your texts in a moment, but if you'd like to be like Jenny, give me a call, 66 13 68, about this topic or any other topic. Water quality on the island. Okay, do we need to improve it? Do we need to test it more regularly? Do we need to put additives into it?
Manx Radio. The Mannin Line. Daily interaction, debate and exchange of ideas. Broadcast on Manx Radio.
Okay, just gone 12:30. Phone switchboard is empty. which means I've obviously been far too scary and scared people off. But if you'd like to give us a call, please do so, 66 13 68. We were talking about the proposed demolition of Tramway Terrace, and it said, don't forget, it was Douglas Corporation who allowed Tramway Terrace to rot prior to government takeover, bit like the acro props that were holding up the Villa Marina colonnade for years. Yes, do you remember those? Before the government took over the Villa Marina and rebuilt it. Don't get me, it's not Douglas Corporation anymore, it's Douglas City Council, I suppose. In terms of looking after Douglas, you could probably point your finger quite a bit at the City Council. The festoon lighting, let's be honest, the appearance of Douglas Promenade is not what it once was, due to a decision of binning off the festoon lighting, and some lights still don't even have fittings on them a couple of years after the finishing of the prom. And the other thing, I noticed that after the storm the other week, when they were clearing up along the promenade, that the digger for the corporation, which was sweeping up all the sand and leaves, just swept up bits of the railings and just pushed them back onto the beach. I personally witnessed that. And you sit there going, number one, the railings shouldn't be in that poor condition. Number two, are we just sweeping up steel rubbish onto the beach and letting it wash away? So, lots of questions to be answered there. Let's have a quick look through some of your texts. G says, what's going to happen to the Tramway Terrace site after demolition? Very good point, G. Or is it going to be redeveloped? Okay, are they going to build something there in the same style? Or is it just a case of it needs to be demolished and then we'll think about it afterwards, a.k.a. the Summerland site? Okay. What's this? Alison says, when will the energy from waste plant be fixed and start to burn waste again? At the moment, it's using 25,000 litres of white diesel each week. I wonder who's paying for that. I wasn't aware of that. Is that Manx Whispers? Is that Rumour Mill? Have we got anything factual on that? I'd like to hear that. The energy from waste plant, which of course is a power station, powers us. It's the incinerator does produce electricity. Maybe we're not producing enough rubbish for it anymore. We're also good at recycling. But thank you for that, Alison, and we'll look into that. I like this. Gary up north says, afternoon, maybe Jenny should change her name to Dandara Jenny or Hartford Jenny or one of the other names that she wants, then she'll be able to do whatever she wants. But on a serious note, Gary says, planning here is a joke and needs a complete overhaul. Thank you very much, Gary, for your text. You can text in 166 177, but it's much nicer to talk to people on the phones. Let's go to Andrew first on line one. Hello, Andrew.
Hi, good afternoon. With respect to Railway Terrace,
yes.
When it comes to we need to immediately demolish things because they're going to fall down and kill everybody, I've put on the table first St Jude's Church, which a good few years ago was condemned, and it was, total rubbish, and the locals took it over and spent about 20 grand on it and repaired it, and it's still standing. So it's all subjective. But when Douglas Corporation owned the tram buildings, there was an attempt made to sell it to a developer. And it's supposed to be a part exchange with a developer. We'll give you that, because it's a very, very big plot for building 2,000 flats on. And it was going to be gifted to this developer, but two of the councillors in Douglas demanded that it went in Dean Woods to be sold legitimately to the highest bidder. And because they insisted upon that happening, it was taken off the market and the deal fell through. So I wonder, not that I'm being cynical or Manx Whispers, whether the building has been allowed to accidentally fall down into disrepair, because the plot size is worth an awful lot of money.
Well, that's interesting.
I wouldn't be remotely surprised if there was lobbying going on, because it's the same as the Stackers site. That's massive for development. It's all. I mean, the Lido won't be there forever. That's going to get built into houses and flats. I just see the whole prom as up for sale, and if it's got a protection order, you let it become so bad it's an uneconomic repair, and then I have to knock it down. Oh, look, we've got somebody wanting to build apartments.
So you think, Andrew, basically this is financially motivated, that possibly because it's not the whole site that's up for demolition, it's just the Tramway Terrace at the front, but you feel that this might be the thin end of the wedge, that this bit goes first, then the tram stables behind could go as well, and it would be a good site for redevelopment into residential.
Oh, yes, because otherwise we're going to have a demolition site at Summerland, which they haven't made into a memorial garden. They haven't tidied it up. It looks, when it's great. You mentioned the carbuncle at one end. I mean, Summerland has no reason to look like that as long as it has. That's just laziness and the fact that no one can agree what to build on it. And they're just going to go down the prom. And if you look at the promenade redevelopment and how short the trams are running for and what an encumbrance they are on, I think, infrastructure now, isn't it? Because the Corpy have backed away from them.
Mm-hmm.
The horse trams are history, and I don't see any time at all before they say we're not going to bother anymore and we don't need the stables at the back. It's a big, big, big site worth a lot of millions of pounds. I think they're phasing out the horse trams gradually, and I think the stables and that plot will be up for sale.
There is another thing, of course, Andrew, if you're playing conspiracy theories, is that we spent a couple of million of public money on the brand new horse tram sheds at the far end there, and there's two of those big red doors with nothing behind it. It's not a tramway stable, there's no rails in there, it's just a big space where I presume if you were trying to think from a business point of view, you turn around and go, well, maybe we stick the horses in there and then you sell off the site.
Yeah, I don't think it's a conspiracy theory like Waters making frogs gay and things like that. It was tried about 10 or 15 years ago. I remember that when they were trying to get their hands on Railway Terrace, there was a little bit of hoovering going on. But I mean, take down the front, it's going to look like a bomb site. And it's only inevitable before you expose the old building to the inshore wind. They'll move them up to Strathallan Crescent there, and that plot will be sold off. I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. It was very obvious. They even tried to move it in the Corpy years ago by adding it on as in any other business, and somebody had to fly back from their holiday to oppose to it, and they were going to sell it to just one developer.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for bringing that up, Andrew. If it comes true and it does happen, I want you back on just so you can say I told you so. Is that all right?
No, I've given up on saying I told you so. I'll just wear it on my shirt now. It just gets tiring in the other one.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Andrew. Thanks for your call. Lovely to hear from you. Is it all part of a view forward of getting rid of the site? Okay. Some people would say that the horse trams are being set up to fail. Okay. That we know full well that they cut them short. There's no sign, no matter how many ministers we've had on promising that it would be followed up. I remember interviewing Tim Baker saying, no, the horse tram, second section of the horse tram track through to Sea Terminal, no, the department will follow that up. And they kept on giving us dates. Nothing's happened. So, empty promises. So is it just another nail in the coffin of the horse trams that someone somewhere in government is desperately trying to hammer in for whatever agenda? Who knows? Mark has been waiting patiently online too. Hello, Mark.
Hey, Alex. How you doing, fella?
I'm not so bad, mate. How are you?
I'm okay. I just want to have a moan, if you don't mind.
Please
for a few
do.
minutes.
Fire away.
Right. The reason I'm ringing you up is to make a plea, basically, to the Chief Executive of Manxcare, Theresa Cope, because I know she listens to the Mannin Line. She listens to it every day. I'm pleading with her to get something done about my doctor's surgery. My doctor's surgery constantly make mistake after mistake after mistake with my medication. So I have to go back and back and back and rebook it and rebook it and rebook it. Now they've left a message on their answering machine saying that I can't phone up for a re-prescription. I've got to either email or pop in or make an appointment. Now, does that make any sense to tie a doctor up for 5-10 minutes just to say, can I have a re-prescription?
Well, I presume that, and I don't know how the process works, but I presume that every GP has to sign off on a prescription, don't they? So,
not if it's a re-prescription and it's something that's basically keeping you alive. They just give you it straight away because they know if it's keeping you alive, it's working. Now, the particular tablets that I've I'm on to keep me alive. I haven't had them for 5 days, and I rang up my GP surgery this morning, and I was on for nearly 45 minutes, and still nobody answered the phone, and I gave up. And I'm basically just saying to Teresa, please, will you do something so that somebody in my GP surgery answers the phone? Even if they just answer it and tell you to get lost, at least they've answered it. But 45 minutes and still nobody answered the phone. So tomorrow I'm going to have to go down to my GP and ask them, can I have an appointment to get a prescription to take to Boots so that I can live another couple of months?
And do you feel this is purely down to resources? Because I've found that it's interesting. I listen to a lot of the stories about, trying to get a GP appointment. And I have to say, my own GP surgery, I've been very impressed with. I got an appointment really quite quickly recently. Thankfully, I don't need to visit them very often. Do you think it's purely down to just resources at your particular surgery? Or is it an island-wide problem that you'd like to see sorted?
I think it's an island-wide problem, but in my particular surgery, if you turn up because they open the doors at 8 o'clock, even though the GPs don't start till 8:30, but if you turn up at 8 o'clock, they will give you an appointment there and then. So in that respect, they are excellent. I can't fault them in any way, shape or form. However, if you start ringing at 8:30 when they ask you to start ringing, I'm lucky. I have a car. I don't live too far away from it, so I can get down there. But lots of people rely on buses and stuff like that to get down. Now, if you're ringing up at 8:30 and somebody answers the phone at 10 o'clock and says, "Oh, I'm sorry, they're all booked," you have to try the very next day. And I just think that Manx Care are getting to the stage now where they are becoming Manx couldn't care less or Manx don't care. And I just think it's so sad that we had an exceptionally good GP surgeries over here at one time. And if they can't cope with the people they've got on their books at the moment, how on earth are they going to manage if we get another 15,000 people to come and live on the island like Alfie Boy's trying to get done?
Well, I mean, it's
just not going to happen, is it? It can't work.
This is a question that seems to come up quite regularly on the Mannin Line, isn't it? That this headline policy from government of increasing the population by 15,000, which, as they say, is about 5,000 skilled jobs, effectively, and then the associated people with their families, etc., coming over. It seems to be the case of that. I've said it before, if they come, we will build it. It seems to be the wrong way round, and lots of people are worried about the infrastructure and services. But the money doesn't seem to be there to pump into them and get them sorted.
Alex, you shouldn't be a radio DJ. You should be a politician. I mean, you'd have to take a pay cut, obviously, but you should be a politician. Because I'm telling you now, you just literally there, you hit the nail right on the head. Get the infrastructure sorted, then see if we can get people over. I mean, rather than try and get people over, why does he try to stop people leaving? I mean, the number of young people on this island who cannot afford to live here, or the ones that go to university and enjoy it so much in Bath or Exeter or Aberdeen and then decide not to come back. And they don't come back because they can't afford to live here. So, get your hustings sorted out, Alex, because I'll vote for you.
Thank you very much. I think I'll stick on my meagre salary as it is, but thanks very much for that one.
All right, mate. Have a good day.
You too. Thanks very much for your call. Cheers, Mark, there, talking about Manx Care. And yes, Teresa, if you're listening, I'm sure, if you want to get in touch with Mark directly, we would gladly put the two of you together. Right, we're going to go to old friends Juan and Julian are both waiting patiently. I'll speak to them after that. All right, just coming up to 10 to 1. Just time for a couple more calls. Julian's on. Hello, Julian. How are you?
Hey, Alex. Very good, thanks. Bit grey out there today. I shall be brief and get Julian on after me. I think you said Julian was holding as well.
It is, yes. You and Julian. Yep.
Oh, right, okay. Water quality. There's an interesting upcoming court case in America. Anyone wants to have a look at it, it's a slightly long website name. It's MOMS, the American spelling of MOMS, MOMS against fluoridation.org. So MOMS against fluoridation.org with the headline, Trial in Federal Court, January 29th, 2024, Lawsuit to End Fluoridation. Lawyer Michael Connett has been battling for many years to get a court case against the Environmental Protection Agency and finally got the court date in January. They're using a lot of studies from around the world implicating negative outcomes with fluoridation, including massively increased hip fractures, bone fragility, thyroid problems, calcification of the pineal gland, and skeletal fluorosis in children, especially if the mother's been drinking fluoridated water. So they are actually going for a court case right across the states to get rid of fluoridation altogether, which might be worth looking at.
Okay, thank you for that, Julian, because I presume I will ask the question because I should never assume that you are against the idea of fluoridation of water.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, there is a slight background to it in a lot of places, but what they've basically done is they've taken what would be where you are getting horrible problems, and then they're just saying anything less than that is acceptable. So the levels that are set are still massively too high because they're not looking at, the long-term constant use of fluoride in the water. So they've gone with the worst-case scenario and said anything less than that is okay. So even down at 0.7 milligrams concentration, they're still finding massive problems. And the other association with it is with the pineal gland, that controls melatonin, which is your sleep. And they're finding in the states that have fluoridation, there's a much, much wider reporting of people having sleep deprivation problems. So there does seem to be some sort of a link with that. But interesting. That's the court case. So January 29th. And you can see it on momsagainstfluoridation.org.
Brilliant. Thank you, Julian. I presume quickly before you go, you brush your teeth twice a day?
Yeah.
Good.
I mean, I'm actually using an aloe toothpaste, actually, rather than the stuff with fluoride in. But, of course, you're not actually swallowing it. So the likes of Colgate and stuff, probably not that bad as long as you don't swallow it. And it even says on the instructions, do not swallow. So the idea of medicating for everyone does seem a little bit extreme, I'd say.
And if nothing else, with aloe, your breath will smell beautiful.
Oh, it does.
Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Julian.
Alex.
Lovely to speak to you. And he's been waiting patiently to the end, as always. I'm sure he's like a curtain call. Dewan, how you doing?
Oh, I'm sure people would love to pull the curtain down before I came on.
Fire away, go on.
Alex Brindley for MHK. What do you reckon? I'll do tourism, you can do MHK, we can have Julian in, and we'll have Bonzo as T-Boy.
Oh, I'd have all trams to peel and everything. You wouldn't want me, I'm sure of it.
Tell you what. Did I hear you have a conspiracy theory about horse trams before?
No, I said I said that we could possibly say that was a conspiracy theory.
You can't be doing conspiracies. It's got to be scientific.
Exactly.
It's got to be scientific.
You've got to have fact.
Just picking up on a couple of things I was going to do on planning, but last week you were talking about, Julian was talking about assisted dying and the very emotive subject of assisted dying. And I just wanted to put out there, I think where he's coming from is, I don't think Julian's against assisted dying. I don't think anyone's against assisted dying. I think the issue is here is what's going on in other countries and the secondary legislation that can be put in. And there is a lot of people who get to end of life who would request assisted dying. But we're in a world which is a bit topsy-turvy and upside down at the moment. And if you look at what's happening in Canada specifically, I think the concerns are of where it could end up if the legislation is not tied in very, 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 very specifically. And I think that's the issue on that. Going on to what someone said before about, you said it in conspiracy on whatever that guy was talking about before.
It was the development or possible redevelopment of Tramway Terrace if the registered buildings get demolished.
Oh, yeah. But there was another one on there. You're talking about, I think someone was on about conspiracy for people dying and stuff like that.
This was someone who texted in regarding the Andrew Bridgen speech and the excess deaths,
And I think, again, he said about being scientific and facts and stuff. And I think if you listen to people like John Campbell, who used to be very, very pro-vaccinations, and if anyone picks up on his stuff on YouTube, and all he does is go through facts. He just outlines and goes through facts. And people like that, you can't be disputed because it's government's own website. And when you get the likes of Pfizer, who quite clearly they tried to put a 50-year secrecy on their vaccination. The side effects are shingles, myocarditis, pericarditis, and I think I asked the government minister on here a couple of months ago about an increase in shingles, and he quite kind of denied it. Well, it's quite clear that there is over in England now. So I just say to people, follow the facts and have a look, like you say, follow the facts, but don't listen to the first person. Planning. I'll finish on the planning before I hear the music.
You know the curtain call. Go on then.
I know the curtain call. I've got it off to my heart. I think this goes across the whole of government, Alex. A big bureaucracy. Not just here. This is just a government thing, overreach of government, and someone's in a position, someone's got a job, and it's easier to say no than yes sometimes. Yes creates work for someone. They have to pick a pen up and do things. Easier to say no to someone than say yes. And I think that's the kind of thing that we need to change, especially here. We need to have a kickstart here and get things going and, cut through a bit of the bureaucracy and get things moving and, of course, build that there nice forest of money trees that we need to do all this.
I mean, it was presented to me the other day. Do you think it's a mixture of not so much that someone saying yes and they have to do some work? It was a mixture of lack of vision, because it's just a day job and I get my wage at the end of the day. And the other side of it was enjoying the power. Bit of power madness in places.
Yeah. Well, and people who wear people put a uniform on and go into government, you get that there power thing, don't they? But I think a department of common sense. I hear the music.
Yeah.
A department of common sense we need, don't we? That would sort it out.
Do you know what? For once, we'll finish on an agreement. Department of Common Sense sounds great.
Cheers out.
Thanks, June. Take care. Well, there we go. That's it. We're out of time. Department of Common Sense. Let's see that in the next ministerial shake-up. More to the point, which MHK would you put in charge of it? I'll leave you with that thought. Thank you very much for your company this afternoon. Andy Wint is back on the Mannin Line tomorrow. Thank you for being so gentle with me over the last couple of days. And it's all changed. 1 to 3 with Chrissy P. Always has to rhyme. Chris Pearson sits in for Christy on 1 to 3. Chris Quirk for me on the afternoon show. I shall be back tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Until then, have a lovely Monday afternoon, whatever you're doing. Stay warm. I'm trying to say some nice things to each other, won't you? Take care. Ta-da.